Happy Thursday, fourth graders. I hope you guys are having a great day. You have been working really hard this week. As you know, we've been discussing theme all week. We've been using both fictional and nonfiction texts to find the big idea or the lesson in the story. That's the theme. Remember, as Miss Todd and I have said, the theme is not the main idea. The theme is the lesson that was learned. So we're going to be using a fictional article today, and we're going to be finding the theme, but we're also going to be talking about the elements of fiction. So who are the characters? What's the setting? Where does it take place? What is the problem? What is the solution or resolution as they use the term they use? And what is the theme or the overall message at the end of the story? So I am going to flip my camera and I'm going to show you the article. You can also find this article on Google Classroom under Day 14 materials. I have the PDF and I have the link, and what's nice about the one that you have access to is it's in color. So before I begin with the article, Anchor Leg by Rich Wallace, I am going to show you some questions that we as readers want to ask ourselves as we are reading fiction. Remember, fiction is fake. It is not true. So we've got different genres within fiction, and we're going to talk about the genre of our article in a minute, but fiction is fake, nonfiction is real. So these are some questions we want to ask ourselves as we are reading a fiction book or a fiction article. Who is the main character, or who are the other characters? Where does the story take place? When does the story take place? Where and when, those are both your setting. It's not just where, it's also what time period, when. Which character has a problem? So what's the conflict or the problem that the character is going through or struggling with? What events happened? So like beginning, middle, end, first, next, after that. How was the problem resolved? Resolved is just another word for solved. What was the solution to the problem? And then what is the message or theme of the story? And how do you know? What's the evidence from the text? So we are going to be using these questions to drive our elements of fiction as we discuss today. And we're actually going to be using this graphic organizer that you have on your Google Classroom under Day 14. You are going to be completing this with me, so I do recommend that you have a whiteboard or a piece of paper so that you are writing this down as we go, and then you're going to finish the assignment on your own after the video. So you will need to turn this in completed. You do not need to use complete sentences. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to put these side by side because I'm going to be using them as I go. Anchor Leg, game on. And this is Jordan, Tara, Devin, and Brian. And before I start, so Anchor Leg, I don't know if you guys have ever run a relay. If you have run a relay race, Mr. Peterson does it here at Mary C. Williams, where you have 4 people and you run a different leg of the race. That is a relay race. And the anchor leg is the last runner. They are the 4th runner that actually crosses the finish line. So this fictional article is going to be all about one of our main characters who is running in the relay race, and he is the anchor leg. So as I said, this is fiction, and that is a category. There's fiction and nonfiction. We know fiction is fake. And then the genre would be realistic fiction. So I'm just going to put RF below because this is realistic fiction. It could happen in real life, but the characters in the story are not real people. Okay. And as I'm reading, I want you to be thinking about who are the characters, Where does this story take place and when does it take place? What's the problem our character is going through? What would happen in the beginning, the middle, and the end? And then we're going to discuss this resolution and the theme at the end. Okay. Anchor leg? Brian stared at his sister. He couldn't believe what she had told him. The other 3 runners on the relay team were faster than Brian. Why would they want him to run last? And usually when you're running in a relay race, you want your anchor leg person to be one of the fastest runners because that's what is really going to help you get that jump start to the finish line. It's simple, Tara said. Jogging in place. We'll get the lead, you'll hold it. Or lose it, Brian thought. He could see it now. Jordan would get out fast on the opening leg, then hand the baton to Tara. She'd build a lead on the backstretch of the track, then hand off to Devin. By the time Devin rounded the curve and handed off to Brian, their team would have a nice big lead. And everyone in the stadium would be watching as Shayna Richardson and Tyrone Camino chased down Brian from behind. They must be on the other team. Here's the thing, little brother, Tara said. We won't win this relay race unless all 4 of us run every step at top speed. Jordan's the natural leadoff guy. He's a quick starter. That leaves 3 legs for the rest of us. Right, Brian said. He glanced over at Tyrone, who was taking some quick strides on the infield. So let me run second or third. Tara shook her head. Too easy, she said. No one would notice if you let up just a little on the second or third leg. But if you dog it ever so slightly, it might cost us the race. You need pressure to run your best, and you know it. And what she means by dog it is if you go slow. So she's saying you need some pressure, just a little bit of pressure to get you to run your fastest. I don't need that much pressure, Brian thought. And this is italicized because it is what he is thinking. The other teams have 5th graders running the anchor legs. He'd be the only 4th grader in the bunch. The pressure will be good for you, Tara said. You'll run like a scared rabbit. I thought that was funny that she said you'll run like a scared rabbit, which means really fast. So I'm just going to put fast next to there. All right, so far we've got 2 characters. We know that Brian, he seems like our main character. And then we've got Tara. Okay? And our setting, where is this story taking place? It sounds to me, since it's a relay race, it's somewhere on a track. We don't know if it's at a school or somewhere else, but it is a track where they can run. And when, it's very important that we also state when the story is taking place. It's taking place in the present time, present or current time. It's not taking place in the past. Okay. All right. And I want you to think for a minute, so you're going to pause the video after I pose this question. What do you think Brian's conflict or problem is right now? What's the problem that he's feeling? What do you think the conflict is? You can write that down on your whiteboard or your piece of paper. So as we know, Brian is our main character, and he's going to run the last leg of the big relay race. And he seems pretty worried about it, don't you think? I think he seems pretty worried. And he thinks he doesn't need all of that pressure. And we even have our evidence from the text saying, I don't need that much pressure. So our problem or our conflict is Brian is worried he is going to let his team down. Oops. And lose the race. And I'm just going to put over here, there's a lot of pressure. He's definitely worried. So that is his problem. Okay, let's go to page 2. Let's read to find out what happens. Make a quick prediction in your head. What do you think is going to happen during this race? Jordan and Devin jogged over. Hands in, Jordan said. He held out his palm, and the others stacked theirs on top. Good hands off, pure speed. Let's go. Jordan walked to the starting line with the other kids running first leg. There were 6 teams in the race, 1 in each lane of the track. So we have confirmation that the setting, it does take place on a track. Each runner would go 100 meters, 1/4 of the way around. So if we're doing our math, this is a 400-meter race because 100 times 4, 400. Tara and Devin went to their spots on the track. Brian let out his breath and walked to his line. He looked over at the other anchors, so the other 4th racers. Tyrone was bent over, stretching deep. He was already the star of the track meet, winning 2 sprint races and the long jump. Shayna had won the 400 meters. Both of them looked relaxed and confident. Brian had run just 1 race, placing 5th in the 100-meter dash. He checked his shoelaces, and wiped some sweat from his forehead. The starter blew his whistle, and the first runners broke from the line. Jordan looked quick and strong as he sprinted along the curve. Brian glanced at Shayna on his left. She was staring straight ahead. Tyrone was on his right, clapping his hands softly. How do you think Brian is feeling right now? How do you think he's feeling right now? He hasn't gone yet. The first leg has started. He's got Shayna to his left, Tyrone to his right. How is Brian feeling as he waits to go? And remember, his sister said, you need pressure to run your best, and you know it, said Tara. I think he's feeling pretty nervous and pretty anxious. I know that feeling when you just want to do your best, and also when you're waiting. The waiting time is almost the worst because you just kind of want to get it started and get it over with. Brian gulped, so he took a big gulp. Tara had the baton now. She also had the lead. Brian felt a surge of energy. He jumped a few times, kicking his legs up behind him. Tara made a smooth pass to Devin, who didn't break stride as he grabbed the baton on the run. Oh yeah, said Tyrone as his teammate moved slightly ahead of Devin. Big effort, Ty, called one of Tyrone's teammates. Tyrone nodded, but he didn't look around. Brian felt his stomach tighten. Jordan, Tara, and Devin had worked so hard. What if he let them down? So remember, that is the conflict. That's the problem that he's feeling. The first 3 runners were almost even as they neared the end of the curve. The group was like a pack of wild horses racing toward the anchor legs. Brian could see the strain or hard work on their faces. They were using every ounce of strength they had. Brian took a few light steps, then began running faster as Devin got close. Stick, Devin called, holding out the baton, and you can see the picture right below. They're passing the baton. Brian felt it slap into his palm, and he gripped it tight as he moved into his fastest gear. Brian was in second. Tyrone was a step ahead, and Brian could feel the heat of the others on his back. Brian didn't think. He just ran. He could hear the others breathing hard and could sense the dig, dig, dig as Tyrone exploded along the track. But Tyrone wasn't pulling away. Every step Brian took matched the leader's, and no one else had passed him. "He's right there, Brian," Tara yelled. "Reach deeper." 50 more meters. Could Brian hang on to second place? "Loosen your shoulders," he told himself. "Stretch out those legs." Shayna ran up next to him. Brian surged or pushed a little harder. Whew. Make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen? Here's our little animated illustration of the final steps. The cries from the bleachers were loud and steady. The spectators were on their feet. A spectator is just a fan. Those are people in the stands that are watching. Brian leaned forward as the finish line got closer. He was an inch ahead of Shayna, and suddenly he'd drawn even with Tyrone. "Reach deeper," Tara yelled. Too many races for him, Brian thought. He's slowing down. So maybe Tyrone he was tired because he had already run 4 other races. The final steps were a blur to Brian. His legs felt like cement, but kept churning. He felt the finish line tape break across his chest, and he stumbled to the track. He felt hands on his shoulders as Tara and Jordan pulled him to his feet. Devin came running up and wrapped an arm around Brian's back. "You won it!" Devin shouted. Wow. "Awesome work, brother," said Tara. She burst into a grin, so a big smile. "See what a little effort can do?" "A little," Brian said. He could barely puff out the words. "That was the hardest I've ever worked for anything." "And it paid off," Jordan said. Tyrone was on his knees near the finish line. Brian walked over and held out his hand. Tyrone shook it. That's great sportsmanship right there. "Great job today," Brian said. "Most of it," Tyrone said. He shook his head gently and gave Brian a sheepish smile. "Running anchor leg is tough. I never want to let my teammates down." "But I didn't have any strength left." Brian nodded. "Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. But pressure can be a handy thing," he thought. So it almost sounds like, it does sound like Tyrone felt the same exact way that Brian did, even though he didn't show it. I found that interesting too. All right. So I also want to I have one quick question where he says, "Yeah, that's the hardest I've worked for anything, and it paid off." Can you make a quick connection? Can you make a text-to-text connection? Is there another book that we've read that you can connect this to, or that you've read that you can connect this to, where someone has worked really, really hard for something? Make that connection in your mind right now. All right, so back to our graphic organizer of the elements of fiction. We've got our characters. Do we have them all? No, we don't. We also have Devin and Jordan. I'm just going to put him right here. Those were our 4 main relay racers. If you would like to add any more characters, because there were a few more that were listed, you can include those in your box. And I'm just going to put a little circle around the main character. Brian was our main character of the story. You'll notice in fiction, you usually have 1 or 2 main characters, and then you've got some more supporting characters. We know that the track is where the story took place, and it took place in current or present time. And we said that the conflict or the problem was that Brian was really worried he was going to let his team down and lose the race. He was under a lot of pressure. So what you are going to do now is I want you to give me the plot. This is the events in the story. They are in order. So I want you to give me the beginning. So what happened in the beginning of the story? What happened in the middle of the story? And then how did the story end? So this is a part that you're gonna be doing on your own. And then we are gonna do the resolution together. So how was this resolved? How was the problem solved in the story? So we know that they won the race, but why did they win the race? Because Brian tried his best and won the race. So he didn't give up, and he took that pressure and used it as a good thing. So that was the resolution. That's how the problem was solved. And notice that my conflict and my resolution, they go together. They need to go together. This is your problem, and this is how it was solved. And then the other portion that you're gonna do on your own is, what is the theme or the message of the story? What did Brian learn? Remember, you're not giving me the main idea or telling me what happened. You're telling me what the theme was. What is the message that Brian learned in the story? All right, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I really liked this article, and kind of took me back to my days when I used to run track a long, long time ago. And please make sure that you complete this, that you turn it in on Google Classroom. You have until Sunday. And then please watch the Brain Pop theme video. It's a really good one. It's got some Star Wars stuff in there too, so we know you'll like it. All right, bye Red Hawks.